Hello, everybody, and welcome to Walking Between Shadows. This is episode 3, season 1 of the Debbie and Ambria case. And we want everyone to please go back and watch episode 1 and 2 so you can kind of keep up with what's going on. This is an informational podcast. We are not investigators, nor do we claim to be. We put this information out as it's given to us, and we're just trying to shed some light on this cold case and several other that we'll do later on. So, Ben?
So interestingly enough, we'll start by talking about who was the prime suspect when this all first started. And it was a guy by the name of Tommy Lynn Sells, also known as the Coast to Coast Killer. And he had been incarcerated in Texas, in I think the San Antonio area, and actually had stood trial and been found guilty for murder. And that was in 2002. So at that time, the current sheriff here, Joe Shepard, and the lead investigator, Jimmy Hand, actually went down and talked to Tommy Lynn Sells because he, at some point along that trial or investigation down there, had laid claim to Deborah and Ambria's murder.
Right.
And told this fantastical story. So the sheriff and the lead investigator went down and interviewed him extensively, and then came back and declared that it was impossible for him to have done this crime and ruled him out as the prime suspect at the time. And one of the things that really led them to him was as he was being investigated for other crimes, and I think it was in that investigation in Texas, they found a receipt in his belonging that was from the Memphis area. And we also know that he worked for a carnival at the time and was traveling and was supposed to be in North Carolina, or actually was in North Carolina during that time, and it's real plausible that he would have gone through Memphis. Mm-hmm. So that makes sense that was possible, but yet when he described the crime scene, it wasn't anything like it actually was, and they knew that, and that was one of the ways they ruled him out. And also just his method was different than pretty well anything else he had been convicted of, or other cases they'd proven he'd been a part of. So at the time, Joe Shepard, the sheriff, and again the lead investigator, Jimmy Hand, ruled him completely out. They came back and published that in the local newspapers, and not only that, they had ruled out another serial killer who didn't add up there.
Right.
And that was the
railway killer, I believe.
The railway.
Ramirez.
Yeah, Ramirez.
Yes.
Yep, Ramirez.
Or Resendez or something like that.
Yeah, it was Resendez, Ramirez. Yeah.
Like that, yeah.
But he was ruled out at about the same time too, because nothing about his timeline or MO even matched closely with any of the things that were going on at the scene out here, or with what they knew had happened by autopsy and examinations. So with that, I'll hand it back to you, and I think you want to get to the next suspect.
Right. So we know this was a crime of passion.
Mm-hmm.
And ruled out Tommy Lynn Sells. We'll go to her first husband, Gary Book. Gary Book is now deceased, so we do know that. Gary Book was working, off the Gulf of Mexico at the time?
Yeah, he was offshore on an oil platform or something.
Right. And we, talking to Debbie's brother, he told us that they had to fly him back in and go over all the records and see where he was at that time, because
right.
He did have custody of Debbie's 3 oldest children too.
Right.
Then we go to Ambria's father. We know that Ambria's father was a man by the name of Billy Harrison. I don't know much about that relationship. I know that Debbie had 2 other marriages from the time Ambria was born until she passed away. So It seems kind of off, that would be, it would be him, but like, we don't know, we're bringing up everyone
that's been mentioned to us.
Exactly. Yeah. A friend of Debbie's by the name of Christy Frame stated that she witnessed an altercation between Debbie and Billy Harrison at Cody's over in Jackson, Tennessee. She didn't specify when or what it was about, what the altercation was about. So, next suspect, Brian Halliburton. That would be her second husband, Ambria's adopted father, and we know we know that he was behind on child support and due in child support court. Or we maybe not know that, but that's what we've been told by a couple people.
Right. One of the former law enforcement officers that we talked to said that they knew that he was due in court over child support in Gibson County or Carroll County or something. They weren't too clear about that.
Right. Then we'll go to the next man that was involved in her life, and the reason possibly that she moved back to 2 Caraway Hills Road. And that was a man by the name of Robert, and we're not sure what his last name is. I don't know how long this relationship went on. I don't know how serious it was. I know that this man, he was a black man, and Debbie's uncle, Bill Lott, kicked Debbie and Ambria out of his home in Humboldt when he found out about this man, Robert.
Yeah, so she was living at the time with her uncle Bill Lott, and her best friend was living there too, Christy Sedlock.
Right.
And Uncle Bill kicked them all out.
Yeah, Uncle Bill wasn't going. He made them all leave.
Yeah, and he was upset with Christy, saying that she should have told him, and
right.
Yeah, so they all had to go. And Deborah and Ambria basically only had one other place they could go, and that was back to 2 Caraway Hills.
Right, and that's when so Debbie's brother Tommy, helped her and Ambria settle back in to that address.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but so she was married to Jamie, and her and Jamie had separated. And is that why she moved to Humboldt into Uncle Bill's house?
I believe so. We now know that she didn't have a phone at the time at 2 Caraway Hills. So I don't, it's probably more convenient. She was working in Humboldt at the time when she was at her uncle's house.
Yeah.
So,
but all that was a result of the separation with Jamie, where they were going their separate ways, so there wasn't any reason to keep a phone on or bills going at that house. So all that got cut off in the meantime before she moved back, and now she's moved back there.
Right.
Okay.
And so that was, approximately 2 weeks from the time she moved back in, March 15th, until the murders. During that time, since we started the podcast, we have found out from the same friend, Christy Frame, that we were questioning the Beretta. We found out the Beretta did belong to Debbie, and she got it at a pay here, or buy here, pay here kind of lot.
So this was the blue car that was in the photos in the Jackson Sun of the scene and all that stuff. And at first, people were saying, even her brother said, I don't know whose car that was.
Right.
Yeah. And Christy Frame laid it out for us and said that, that was, in fact, Debbie's car, and she had bought it at a buy here, pay here lot. Okay.
And she had just bought it, from my understanding. And, of course, she didn't have a phone those weeks, that she was living there, those 2 weeks. So, and Tommy was working on the road. So it's been hard for her to,
communicate
with anyone, except for maybe people that would stop by or at work.
Yeah. So at first the question was, she had a silver Regal or gray Regal, Buick Regal car, and in the first couple of conversations we had with Tommy, he didn't know what the disposition of that car was, whether it had been traded for the Beretta or at a mechanic shop or whatever. Yeah.
But the key to that Buick Regal was found after the initial search of the home, and it was found behind a picture of and that was in the living room or in the kitchen area. So that we brought that up, I think, too, last episode. So the black man named Robert from Humboldt, we've heard that he was really good to Debbie and Ambria, and that he was introduced to Christy Sedlock, her best friend that was living with her, and was introduced to Tommy as well.
Yeah.
So believe Tommy told us that the ex-girlfriend of Robert and Debbie didn't really like each other, but I don't know how serious that was either.
Yeah, he didn't really indicate that they had clashed or had some sort of fight or anything like that.
He did not. No,
okay.
He did not.
Yeah.
I think it might have just been a jealousy thing between women, but it needed to be brought up anyway.
Yeah, it's been kind of a theme in this, hasn't it?
It has been a theme in this, and I wanted to make sure we covered everybody so nobody feels like they're singled out or we're pointing fingers.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, so that you were talking about Jamie and her being separated, so that would be the next suspect.
Yeah.
And we talked about last week the 3 different blood stories.
Yeah.
And we talked about how there was a phone call made around the 30th or the 31st or 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to a vet tech that was working at the vet that Jamie took his dogs to.
Mm-hmm.
And she explained that he called her and told her that there was blood. The dog was throwing up blood everywhere. And it was in the carpet and everywhere. And then we talked about a man named Bob Rowe that saw Jamie somewhere in between the 30th and the 4th.
Yeah.
Before the bodies were found.
Yeah.
And he saw him at Little General. And there was blood on the van door, I believe. And there was injuries on Jamie. And Jamie explained that he had gotten into an altercation with a man that he had brought home from a bar.
Mm-hmm.
And they had fought in the van.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the injuries and the blood came from.
So that's the second blood story. So the first one was the dog was throwing up blood.
Mm-hmm. That was from the vet tech. The second one was from a man named Bob Rowe that's now deceased. And the third one was made by Christy Frame, saying that the dog was in heat.
Mm-hmm.
And that the phone call to the vet tech was never made,
mm-hmm.
which I don't know how she knows that. But we do know that Christy Frame also told us that she had plans with Debbie every night that week of Easter week.
Mm-hmm.
They had plans to go to dinner on Monday the 29th after she saw Dawn Patterson, and that didn't happen. Debbie had plans to pick up Christy Frame's son on Tuesday at 2:30, and that did not happen. And Christy also stated that Debbie's boss from Piggly Wiggly asked her to check on Debbie because she hadn't showed up for work on Thursday, April the 1st.
Yeah.
We do not know if Christy did. She said she was starting her own podcast.
Yeah, so she's made it clear that, she's going to tell her story on a podcast. That's great. We encouraged her to.
Absolutely. Maybe we can find out if she checked on her that week or.
Yeah, I think Christy left a lot of things unsaid,
right.
and hopefully she'll say them in her podcast. So,
right.
We wish her luck and we
Absolutely.
Can't wait to watch it.
Yeah. So we know that the DNA and the fingerprints there was no unfamiliar DNA or no unfamiliar fingerprints or DNA or forensic evidence. And we know that Jamie was living in the home all the way up until February.
Mm-hmm.
So Jamie was living there all the way up until 2 weeks before, or a month before the murders.
Yeah.
And when an officer explained to family that his fingerprints and footprints were everywhere on the scene, the family member explained to the police officer, of course they'd be there because he just moved out of here. He's
right.
lived here.
Right.
I mean, we don't know how long that Jamie resided at this address before January of '99. We're unsure of that.
Yeah, and we don't know if during the 2 weeks she was back in the place that he did or didn't visit while she was back there.
Right, we don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know, we don't know if they were having issues at that time. We don't know. We know that Jamie Harris was seen on the 30th or the 31st at a birthday party in Gibson, Tennessee. We know that on the 3rd of April, he was with 2 females and a male, and they went to Spinnaker's in Jackson, and then went to a motel and checked out around 11 a.m. on April the 4th. We know on April the 4th, after checking out of the motel, he went back in one of the women's vehicles. He went back and picked up his van and his 2 dogs and got beer at Little General and went riding and rode out to Caraway Hills 4 to 6 times. We don't know why. We don't know if he stopped there. We don't know if they had already if anyone had already found the bodies, or we don't know. We know that TBI showed up around 2 a.m.
2 a.m. on Monday morning. Yeah. And so all of that actually came from interrogation notes that were taken when the Gibson County Sheriff's Office interviewed those people that supposedly were with him that day.
Right. And I mean, so everything we've said is basically just been what we've picked up from people throughout this podcast. We're on episode 3 now, and we're trying to keep this open. So if anybody wants to come forth, and because I don't want to let go of these girls until something is maybe hopefully done. And I want to say that please put aside your harsh comments or victim shaming, and just try to focus on getting some answers for everyone, because this has been hard for her friends and her family. And Ben, you talked to the sheriff's department a couple weeks ago. We talked about that a little bit last week, and you can kind of explain what they said and what we've been talking about.
Yeah, so I talked to the chief deputy down there, Danny Lewis, and when I asked him about this case specifically, he said, we've wrapped that up, and the guy died in prison a few years ago. We went back to Debbie's brother, Tommy, and told him what Danny Lewis said to us, and Tommy said that's exactly the same thing they said to me 3 years ago. And we think that was in about 2017, so it may have been as many as 5 years ago when he heard that same thing. So it kind of set a precedence in that we started feeling like if the sheriff's department has this thing wrapped up and the guy died, then why is it they're not telling the family? And so I would say overwhelmingly that it's important for the sheriff's department to tell this, because and not just for the family, but for people that are accused in this thing. They've been living with a burden all their own, and it's only fair that they get closure too, but mainly for the family, for Tommy and his wife and Deborah's 3 girls that are still living and down in Louisiana, and all the people that had to go through this process and been accused. If they have it wrapped up and the guy died, then clearly it's not anybody in this list, according to the sheriff's department. And they need to say that. So what we've done is we've gone out and gotten letters, Freedom of Information requests, and we're going to send those to the Gibson County Sheriff's Department, to the sheriff, Paul Thomas. And what this is a letter that states the U.S. Code and the Tennessee State Code, saying that if it is in fact a closed case and it's a matter of public record, then we want you to share that with us. It asks to send copies specifically of all the files from the Deborah Harris and Ambria Halliburton murder on 4 of 1999. But the other thing it says is, if you're not going to tell us, if it is not closed, then tell us why you won't share that. And use code and statute to support why you won't share that, why it's not part of the Freedom of Information Act. And so anyone that has come forward to us, anybody that we've talked to, and anybody that sees this podcast that wants to know more about it, we encourage you to send us information so we can fill out one of these letters on your behalf, and we'll send it back to you, where you'll digitally sign it and then return it, and we'll mail it, because it has to be sent certified mail. But we need your name, your address, your email address, and your phone number to complete the letter. So if you can get us those 4 pieces of information, and you would like one of these letters to be sent to the Gibson County Sheriff's Office on your behalf, again, this is a Freedom of Information request. It's perfectly legal, and we'll send those letters. We'll send them even if we don't get them all at once and they trickle in. We'll send them, and that's just the first step. There are other things that can be done too, but we have to start with this, and that's what we're doing on behalf of Deborah and Ambria and their family, and again, all of the accused, everybody that has been walking around with one version or another of this burden. We're going to send these letters out. And we encourage everybody, like Christy Frame, if she wants to participate in this, send us, and Jamie, send us your information. We will put your name on this and send it in, and hopefully we can get the Sheriff's Department to give us answers. And silence is an answer. Silence
screams.
Yep.
So, it does. So that's another thing. We've been addressed by a friend of Jamie's why we are pointing fingers just at him. And we are not. We are not pointing fingers just at him. We have clearly stated everyone and the facts that we have received.
Yeah, and ultimately that's what the purpose of this podcast is just information.
So we're reaching out to Jamie as well. If he wants to come forward, that'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be great. And we encourage him to sign this piece of paper here, because it's very important.
Yep.
I mean, he can get this off of him.
Yep. And so, that goes for anybody. We know of some people that interacted with Jimmy Hand, and Jimmy Hand has passed away since. He passed away in 2021.
No, 18.
No, 2018. That's correct. But we know those people, and we've talked to them that interacted with him when he was active as an investigator for the Sheriff's Department, and then towards the end of his life. And Jimmy was pretty revealing to some people.
He really was to some people. I think that he carried this burden until
the end of his life.
Till he passed away, from my understanding of what he stated to someone.
Yeah, and the point being here is, if the Sheriff's Department, if anybody botched this, and, why can't we get them to bring another agency in or another technique? Technology's improved in 23 years. I mean, there's so many ways now that, DNA evidence can be looked at, or any physical evidence can be looked at again. And why are they not doing that? And my point here with bringing that up is that, if it's to protect somebody that's no longer with us, then you've got so many people that could benefit from knowing
the truth. So why not just tell us?
Yep. So again, whether you're one of the accused or a victim's family, it doesn't matter. We want you to participate in this Freedom of Information request if you want to. It's choice. You don't have to. And we look forward to hearing from you about it.
Yes, we do.
So with that, I think that's a pretty good summary of where we were. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No. Next week we're going to cover Karen Swift case. That happened in 2011 in Dyer County, Tennessee. Pretty close to here. We know that there was an arrest made about 3 weeks ago, a month ago, on her husband. So they've wrapped that up, and we'll be covering that next week, and I'm looking forward to that. We're also looking forward to covering these ghost stories and urban legends.
Yeah, for the month of October, especially. It's the month of Halloween, and we're gonna do some little featurette stuff on urban legends, and I'm excited about Sleepy Hollow Road, and
I'm excited about it, but I'm not excited about the fact that you tell me you're gonna take me out there late at night and then shut the engine off like they tell you to do, and then let all this stuff come out of where and get us.
No, they don't get you. They stand there and talk to you.
What do they talk about?
Well, how you doing? How's your night going?
How's your mama name?
Yeah, how's your mama name? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, I mean, plenty of people have done it and lived to tell the tale. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an urban legend, right?
Or have they?
I don't know. So, we've got several that we want to look at. I mean, several we're going to feature on it, and I'm excited about it. And I can't wait to get you to put the chains back up. So, good luck with that, too, by the way.
Yeah, right.
But anyhow, again, before we go, I just want to say thank you to everybody for tuning in. And we're not dropping anything here because as we get updates, I mean, we've still got some interviews to do with maybe some former law enforcement officers.
Yes, yes.
And some other people connected to either side of it. Again, if they're part of the accused or part of the victim's family, we're still going to talk to them. And we'll be doing updates along the way.
Right. That sounds good. Sounds like a good plan for us.
Yeah, so thanks again for watching. And don't forget, before you go away, to hit that like and subscribe button. This has been Walking Between Shadows.
Thank y'all.
Have a good one.